tell us about your wordsmiths activities. What do you like to do? Do you like to write poetry? Do you like to write rhyme and rap? What's your interest there?
It's quite broad. I write a bit of poetry. I write a lot of raps as well, or rhymes. I'm also very fascinated with story. I mean, story is everything, really.
Cool.
And having studied animation, like story and rhythm, and you kind of find yourself in that space of having to create life with inanimate objects, of course. So I'm interested more about the rhythm of the words as opposed to the words themselves, because obviously the words, they change between languages. So the content and the core of that message is ultimately more important.
Do you have a Medium account?
I do.
You do. We
It's
should
I do
follow
it.
each other on Medium because I'm
Sure.
into doing a lot of writing. I have a lot of writings on there, a lot of poetry and stuff like that, a lot of rhyme. Some of my
Awesome.
musical rewrites, like parodies, are on there as well. So yeah, we should definitely follow each other on Medium. I it's like a little side passion that I like to do now and then. And then recently I actually just got hooked on this app called Smule, and you can
I've heard of some.
sing
Yes.
karaoke, right?
Right,
And
right.
sing with a bunch of people all over the place. So I've been having a lot of fun with that, even though I can't carry a tune in a bucket unless it's got a hole in it. And that's the only way it flows. So yeah. But I'm having a blast doing it, you know?
All right, right.
And sometimes
No,
I guess
definitely
that's all
check
that
out the
matters.
medium.
All right,
Yeah.
so you were talking about making life with inanimate objects, and I kind of just had this idea, like, just take 30 seconds, pick two inanimate objects, and make life with it for us. See what you can come up with.
Oh, in terms of just spoken word or rhyme or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, just spoken
Okay.
word. Which...
Two inanimate objects. Okay. I think I'll take a glass that's half full and a life that's half empty. I'll try to tempt the creation method using introspection. Without the leopard, I was losing my stripes. So I looked twice at both of these objects, ground them together, and my advice to each was bend for your creation, mend for your elevation, and when you merge at the intersection, find your suggestion. So when glass met cipher or word met mic device, I chose to take my life in a single breath and throw it back twice.
Wow. So that right there is called creating art live on the internet. Amazing. Amazing. I loved it, man.
Oh,
That
thanks,
was
man.
cool.
Now
That
we
was
need to
really
ask
cool.
that question to like everybody.
I know, right? You know, that would be fun. Like take a
Yeah.
word or take a just an object in nature and do a quick writing about it or a quick speak about it, right? So like a tree, for example, right? The tree that grows the straightest is never, you know, necessarily the best, never necessarily produces the best fruit, right? Sometimes it's not in the beauty of the tree that you see, but in all the glory that it possesses as a tree. I don't know. It'd be kind of fun.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Terra Virtua, because Terra Virtua was first brought to our attention, or my attention, when I got the little Crypto Conroy, if I recall, the name was NFT that they airdropped. And I promptly forgot about it for quite some time until Brian Brinkman did his, what the hell did he call that, Mitch? But the little, like the soda and the popcorn guys and stuff, we had him on the live stream, and he was kind of talking about that. And so Terra Virtua came back to my attention, and I've been kind of, I haven't applied to mint on there yet, but I've been really watching the artwork go across there and trying to collect some of it, because it's like, it's interesting that every platform seems to have kind of like its own little unique type of art. I mean, there's a broad variety on all of them, but they tend to stray in one direction or another. And the stuff that's on there just seems to be a lot more up my alley. It's like more, a little bit more trippy and a little bit more like a mixture of, it's not just the same old bald 3D guy that you see over and over again. And it's just, I don't know. I've been falling in love with the platform. So I want to hear about it from an artist perspective, minting on it, and so the collection side of it. what is it like compared to some of the other platforms you've minted on? Are you enjoying it so far?
Well, it's my first one, and working with the team has been quite seamless. So they've got their own sort of gallery that's hosted in the Unreal Engine. If you've checked it out, it's really rad. So it gives you this sort of hybrid space, similar to other platforms like Altspace, which has a local or desktop client.
Right.
Except the thing that's really appealing is obviously it's Unreal Engine, so you're going to get beautiful lighting dynamics, and like I'm sure when they scale to different let's say environments, you'll really enjoy that as well. The minting, it's non-traditional. It's through a form-based method, but I found it quite easy. But the team are very communicative as well and very helpful. So that's important, the support aspect, which some platforms seem to lack.
No,
you know?
Certainly not. I thought customer support was number one on minting platforms.
Yeah. So it definitely it's a good foray into the space as well. And with the backbone of Unreal, I'm sure it's going to open up a whole lot of interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, it really takes it when you actually are using an entire graphics game, like physics and game engine underneath a fucking NFT platform. Like you're not just like, I know voxels is amazing and all, but it's very limited. It's you got a lot of creative leeway, but it's still very limited in what you can do from a technological perspective. So it really opens it up, and now artist imagination can just kind of go where it wants to. And I don't know. I think the next 5 years are going to really, even if what we're looking at right now, we're going to see shit in 5 years that we're like, where did this even come from? We never even dreamed of this happening.
Yeah, it's an extremely exciting time to be alive. I mean, the rate at which everything is moving, I mean, it can cause you a degree of anxiety, but like at the same time, like control what you can. And that's the beautiful thing about it. There's actually so much across the whole ecosystem that everyone can actually find their place in terms of what they feel comfortable with, rather, not their place, but what they feel comfortable interacting with.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something. When it comes to your art, if you could pin an emotion to it, what emotion do you think you would pin to it most of the time? Because I'm sure it varies. Sometimes it's a happy emotion, or sometimes, you see where I'm going with that though. If you, like the majority of your collective art that you put out, where do you feel that emotion, what emotion can you pin to that?
I'd have to say there's a degree of, okay, let me rather put it in context of what I really enjoy, and that might lead you down this path. So from a musical standpoint, like I used to fall asleep to Rage Against the Machine and Nine Inch Nails and hip hop and like a wide range of music. So a lot of it would be born out of the need to express and not always having the platform to do it. Also being in the country where I grew up, like it's not always that you're able to just express yourself freely for a while. So I think a lot of the emotion that comes through in my work is drawing the viewer in and having them ask questions, but also it's a strong element. It's like a silent strength that comes through, as opposed to very in your face, like, yo, this is strong. Sometimes saying nothing is the strongest thing you can do in certain instances.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at like old traditional art, and you look at, say, Warhol, for example, and his expressionism, and, most of his drawings, if I remember correctly, were of like, skylines of cities and stuff like that. And, there's other artists out there that there was a lot of anger that came out of them in their artwork. So when you look at a piece of art from them, you would see the anger like literally oozing out of their soul and onto the canvas. And it's some of the pieces that I've seen in the NFT space and I've seen flying around, you can definitely see distress or anger or frustration in a lot of the pieces. You can see a lot of joy and a lot of happy-go-lucky exuberant type pieces, and then you see other pieces that are melodramatic, so it's really neat to see the change in the spectrum and how many different elements actually go into a piece of art. And did you get a chance by chance to catch our Gary V episode that we just did recently?
I did. I gave it a listen. Absolutely.
And we talked about how emotional and how deep the pourings can be onto your art canvas, whatever that canvas is, whether it be a digital screen or whether it be an actual physical canvas. So just a lot of the expression of art, it just goes really deep.
Absolutely. I think also if we put it in the context of just the last year and the current state that we're in as a shared sort of world, there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain that people have gone through. They haven't had the outlet necessarily, where sometimes you'd actually just be chilling with your friends, or they need some sort of interaction. And you go inside, and how do you get it out? Like, you're making music, you're writing, you're creating this art, and at times it's almost a form of protest at the same time, or an outcry rather. Especially, I mean, last year was painful for so many people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we see that, as you said, reflected in the art. There's a lot of hurt, there's anger, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's so much. And a lot of the time in my own experiences, I use my art to try and transmute, or I think of myself as an alchemist in that way. Like, all this anger and negativity that I feel, I want to just repurpose it and be able to inspire someone else through that. So what I show them might not necessarily be anger, but it comes from me dealing with my anger and trying to put a different outlook on it, a new perspective, and just a little shift of the lens.
So would you say that NFTs are pretty much driving a 21st century renaissance?
I'd have to agree with you there, in part. The fact that at various scales, everyone is able to create a sense of value around their communities, without the traditional models that have kind of enforced ways and behaviors. And because things move so quickly, the adaptability is there. And
right.
I mean, it's absolutely opening up markets that I might never have even had access to, in terms of having to go into this uncomfortable space of communicating across different time zones and interacting with complete strangers and finding the commonalities. So that is a renaissance in itself. There's people stepping outside of the shelves, rebirth, and going, hold on, like, we've got to fix something else here. Like, this hasn't been working. So let's try something different.
Exactly.
Yeah,
man, it's just a huge change. And you're right about it being, it's so much bigger than just that. It's everything in the world right now is totally just a reset in a way, right? It has been for like the past years. It's been a reset. Every time you turn around, something else is being reset, and upward we go.
And the market as well. Upward we go.
And the market,
right?
we go.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
You look at the crypto market on a daily basis, and there's a lot of excitement going on there, and all these new people coming into the space. I went and got my hair cut yesterday. Yesterday. Days, everything's a blur. But yeah,
a week, remember?
Yeah, right. Went and got my
Right.
gray hairs all trimmed up yesterday, and it was my first time seeing this stylist, and she was referred to me by my neighbor. So I went and got my hair cut, and we got on this. I had my shirt. It says, you got Bitcoin, and she's like, "Oh, you're into Bitcoin," and therein lies the conversation. Go bam, Next thing, she's like, "Yeah, I got some Ethereum," and she goes, this is a lot of fun. And I finally got into it, and I listened to podcasts. So I told her about our podcast. And then I'm like, well, so you don't have any Bitcoin? She goes, no. And I'm like, well, how about I pay you for my haircut with Bitcoin? And she goes, how you gonna do that? Right. So I taught her how to set up a wallet and was able to send her some Bitcoin. And she was just blown away by that. So adoption is coming. It's just slow. It's a process. And we, the OGs in the space, we, the people that have been around the space for a while need to be those teachers, I think. And, you know, whether it's the NFT space that's booming and all everybody knows is NFT, right? That's what's being just bombarded mainstream. And so these people are coming into this space. Well, all they know is and they're trying to wrap their head around that. But then they realize that there's this big blockchain space, right? And so it's so expansive, they just get overwhelmed. So I think it's our job to definitely teach. It's a lot of fun. Now,
I agree.
Where you're at, Shinji, do you see a lot of crypto adoption happening?
I think I've definitely noticed more of an uptick in terms of we started to see billboards at least on some parts of the highway. Yeah. So there are about 3 main providers on the side, Luno being one of the big ones. And they've been around for a while, and it seems just like it's growing day on day. Obviously, but one of the key shifts recently has been that mainstream like push by your Elons and like MasterCard and Visa opening up certain things and giving people options, because they've heard about it for a while, but it's always been in this like, oh, it's just for a certain type of individual, not always a good one necessarily. So the FUD has been real for a long time, and finally people are starting to open up to, hey, this is actually making sense. In my personal capacity, I've been trying as best as possible with people that I interact with, whether it's normal day workers and that sort of thing, and educating them. It's like, have you heard about this? Do you have any idea? Would you like me to show you how to set up a wallet? That sort of thing. So I have been trying where I can in the interactions that I have been able to have, considering obviously the pandemic. But otherwise, most of that has also been through remote assistance with other individuals, whether artists or also predominantly like people that are also slightly more elderly, because you don't want any age group to be left behind. Younger ones are always, hey, let's try something. And then on the flip side of it, it's like older ones are more apprehensive, but it's actually in their best interest to just have an open mind. So yeah, it's been an interesting challenge, one that I actually really enjoy, because I love sharing information where I can, if I'm obviously knowledgeable on the subject, not opinionated. And yeah, that's been really another sense of fuel that's pushed me forward through the last year as well.
That's awesome. I wonder if, there's new people listening in to this stream, whether it's live or later. How would you, maybe between you and the professor, how would you explain to the listeners what an NFT is?
Professor, you'd like to go first?
Yeah, I was like, are you asking me right now? So, okay. I mean, so
I'm asking both of you. So.
So the hard part is obviously trying to explain it in a way that somebody could understand it, right? So the beauty of an NFT is the most complex part of the NFT. So just like with cryptocurrency in general, the real value of it comes from understanding the tech. And so you have to really come up with a way to break down an incredibly, I mean, honestly, relatively simple, but incredibly complex in what it takes to really understand it, to such a point that somebody could actually trust it with their money, which becomes a really tricky subject. But I always tend to just try to abstract it to saying this is a way that we can mathematically prove when something was created and who owns it. And you just can't do that with any digital item right now. So it's, sometimes you kind of have to try and avoid the tech and get around and just sort of give that overlaying of it. And I try to stay away from calling it art, because really an NFT is not art. I mean, art can be NFT, and an NFT can be art, but there's so many potential use cases for NFTs outside of even outside of the concept of digital objects or digital things. It goes so deep that I don't know. I'm one of those people that over explains things to the point where I have a really hard time putting anything simply without confusing people. But that's about what I try to get at.
Well, I got art out of that, and I got challenging, and I got really deep, and then I got something else. And yeah, but like
math,
a non-fungible
just
token,
math does
right?
it.
Math,
Yeah.
right?
So-
Mathematics is everything behind blockchain, right?
Okay, so if you just want non-fungible token, then we'll just go to the very base definition and just say a token that you can identify separate from other tokens, whereas Bitcoin is fungible, for example, and you can't tell one Bitcoin from another. You know, NFT is a token that has a token ID and can be uniquely identified. So
Boom.
that is another critical piece of it. But that doesn't really.
But that's the
To
basics.
me, NFT is so much more than that. So that's where my brain comes in, and it fucks me because it just wants to like dump all this useless information at people. And so it's one of those things.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly. That's exactly. That's why Mitch is here, because then I can just ramble and then Mitch can translate.
There you go. There you go.
Oh man,
I love it.
All right, so let's talk about the guild a little bit, because
sure.
timing wise, we don't often get to record something where there's like an event that we can actually talk about, because we usually release this shit so late because we have like 30 episodes recorded right now. And I'm so slow at editing. We hired an editor, so this is amazing. But we have an opportunity right now to talk about something in a timely fashion. So do you want to just kind of tease what you can about the Cyberwatch collab?
Sure. So the Cyberwatch collab is the guild's first major collab on the async platform, and it involved 33 artists from around the world, different time zones, all recreating essentially Rembrandt's Nachtwacht, but in their own way. So it was spearheaded by Rutger van der Tas, who's an incredible artist and cohort, as well as Jesus, the amount of names I couldn't run them off the top of my head right now, but
yeah, we can get about halfway through and then start forgetting names.
No, I could pull up the list, but I think the best would be to just pop a link for them to check out afterwards and explore. But because they're 33 or 34 independent layers, each of them has variable states, obviously, as async has. So the permutations are incredible, the amount of variety that can exist. So that's been really exciting. In terms of coordinating everything, getting people outside of their comfort zones to create within sort of a space. So the silhouette of the character that was taking up the space in the original piece, but they would have to adapt according to what they feel or what their rendition is. So having people feel really challenged by it, but also rise to the occasion has been really, really interesting to see and witness.
It makes for some interesting results, even just in your own head, like just you get some sort of restriction like that. And sure, you have all the freedom in the world to create anything you want, but you have such a simple yet incredibly limiting restriction that's just kind of like infuriating to an extent, but also extremely exciting at the same time. It's kind of like weird, masochistic sort of shit. I don't know, but I mean, it's fun. I had a good time doing it, but it was some of the stuff that came out of that, like, the things that people created in a shape that I would have never thought the result would have come out of. Was you can just look at this piece for forever and find something new, even having been in it. Like, there's so many. Have we ever done the math yet on how many permutations?
What's that? 34 layers with roughly, I would say the average is 3 states. There are 1 or 2 that have just 2 states.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's 34 layers with 3 possibilities. I think we crunched that in, and it turned out to be at least a very large number. I'm not going to even remotely remember what that number was, but it was a large number. You could just be hitting that button all day, and you probably never hit the same one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah.
I love it. Okay, so beyond the guild, because we could talk about that for days, but let's talk about what you're working on next, because we've seen a little bit about what you've already released and some of the stuff you teased, but what are you excited about that you haven't started actually working on yet?
Okay, so there's something quite interesting now that we're able to mint on async, is to hybridize sort of like a mix of, I'm keen on storytelling, so I kind of want to have a multi-stage sort of NFT in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
where it moves from ideation on paper through to wall to AR to like another layer.
I like that.
And then the fact that you can have it with programmable elements, that really opens up the idea for something special. So I work a lot with a mix of like spray paint as well as inks. Mm-hmm. So you can expect something that definitely spills over different canvases and and walls and screens.
That's sick. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be incredible. It's amazing what you do with one single canvas and medium. So I can't even imagine. I was so excited to see the async canvas highlighted and available. I'm like, oh my God, my notebook of ideas can finally come to life. Here we go.
Absolutely, man. Your work is incredibly detailed. I get lost in there. Like, seriously.
Oh, really? Well, thanks, man. I just kind of fuck around and have a good time and make what I find interesting, and I hope that somebody likes it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I feel like I'm just so out of my element, out of my league here, but it's like it feels so good just kind of being in it and having a good time and not really worrying about it. You know, just make what feels good and just have a good time. And you know, like your art is just, every time it comes out, it's fucking mind blowing. I'm just like, how does this guy come up with this shit?
I don't sleep much, so I think some of these synapses are crisscrossing.
They've created their own paths and they're making their own connections. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Now we just need to see inside of it.
So Litecoin Lisa has a question. She's in the chat and she wants to know what your thoughts are on what's going on in the US, and how you feel about it compared to like where or how you grew up.
Oh man, like it pains my heart to see
like censorship and everything that's going on.
Oh man, it's like the amplification is significantly greater, because we obviously living in a time period where the news is just instant, right? Whereas previously it would be quite staggered, so you wouldn't see the amount of fuckery, if I can say.
Right. No, that's a great way to put it. I like that.
That's the best word. Absolutely.
You gotta start using that word more often now, actually.
So I can draw definite comparisons. Like, for instance, when there was the inability for families to even see their young ones, right? Like that's a thing that has hit home on this side of the world for decades prior. I mean, it's reduced a lot now. We have more integration, but like there are still ghosts of the past, if you will, that plague us as well. So when you see it in another society on the other side of the world, which is sort of a beacon of certain principles, it's really disheartening, like to see that sort of freedom collapse in a sense.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. I can't imagine. I mean, being here and seeing these things depreciate and seeing these things collapse and fall apart and deteriorate is disheartening, you know, but it's funny you say that, because I think a lot of us in the United States, be it political or whatever, tend to lose sight of the fact that we are a beacon for positive things. We are a beacon for freedom, and we're supposed to be a beacon for democracy and, you know, humanity, really. And to see us fall short of that is really disheartening. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But then let me turn this around to the other side of the coin. What do you think as a people we can do to create change?
I think right now what we are trying to do is we're trying to connect across space and time using technology, right? So we've got the best minds scattered across the world, able to solve problems with solutions that exist, but they're not distributed enough. So like currently in South Africa, we have a problem where we have load shedding, right? So archaic sort of infrastructure is falling apart due to a host of political problems, essentially, from the past. But on the other side of the coin, we have things such as renewable energy, and we have a country that gets a lot of sunlight and a lot of wind and is surrounded by water, so and has geothermal activity. So like there should not be a problem because we have existing solutions. So I think as a world, it's getting those solutions as far out as possible to those that need it. And that's happening through the facilitation of ideas. And when I see it in the space that we're currently in, the dissemination of information is happening so fast that it's really important. We're able to lift many, many different communities, and we might not ever see those communities. And that's one of the key things that has actually drawn me to, say, NFTs and crypto, is the fact that you can literally have such a dramatic change for people that you've never ever met, but you share like a common feeling of compassion and empathy for.
And I think you just hit like a key point right there, is the fact that with technology, as odd as it sounds, we can get lost in the computer, and we can get lost and connect and work with and enjoy and share time with people all over the world. And, you know, call it an escape, if you will. But I think that's a good example of what's happening a lot of now, is that people are so distraught with everything going on around them that they find themselves falling into the computer and falling into societies within societies and in crypto space and everywhere else, right? And social media has become that focus. I think I tend to see a lot of people using social media for different reasons, and it's not always about just being social, right? Because that's what we're supposed to use it for, is just being social with one another. So I think as a people, if we can get back to that zero, if we can get back to that, you know, collaboration, if you will, kind of like you just said, you know, collectively across the world, this is a global issue. This isn't just an issue in the United States. This is a global issue. Humanity is a global issue. Financial markets are a global issue. Financial stability is a global issue. Health is a global issue. You know, food, everything. So instead of looking at us as a single country, we need to start looking at us as a global community and coming together as such. And I think that's where true change is going to come, because the more numbers you have, the more voice you have, the louder you can be.
Absolutely.
That was deep. I like that. That's fun. I love going deep.
I couldn't agree with you more. What I found really eye-opening through the course of last year is, so the world became accustomed to wearing a mask, right? So like you were forced to like open your eyes, and your other senses got heightened. Your ability to listen opened up. Where you weren't speaking as much, but you were listening, and you were seeing and reading different languages, so to speak. Now that's happening obviously through the screens now, where we're able to see that we're actually not that far apart from each other in terms of our core values. Obviously, these go down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and those core key drivers, but like Maslow, sorry. But I think we're starting to experience it as technology becomes more of a necessity than a luxury. In some countries, it's a pure luxury because, I mean, we don't have access to running water in parts of South Africa. This is another project that I'm using some of my art to highlight.
You don't have any what? I'm sorry.
In some parts of the country, people don't actually have access to clean running water and drinking water. They have to walk like kilometers to get a bucket to get water from one place to another, right? Like a borehole. So when those are the type of problems that still exist at a ground level, and we have technology to solve it, it's the responsibility of those that are able to see it to be able to shed light on it and ultimately try to solve it. Because it's not like the solutions don't exist. It's just political at that point, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of getting the things moving and in place and actually happening and getting it done. And there's so much red tape when it comes to that. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, there's probably somebody willing to donate the money that it would take to do it, but sometimes you can be sitting there with millions of dollars and just not be able to make something happen because of red tape. So, but I like to see advancements happening like that. I love that you're putting some of your proceeds into that, because it's it's really important to give back like that. And it's almost hard to find legitimate ways to do that too. So it's nice to see somebody who's actually, found a cause that's worth supporting. So do you want to tell us kind of a little bit about how you're going about that?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
And if you could after this episode, if you could share some information on our Twitter, and we can
Absolutely.
help, spread the word about that.
Absolutely. Thanks. So previously, it was a month ago, so I got invited to paint at a local street art festival. And I was invited by an NGO called Viva Con Agua. So they've been around for about 15 years, and they started out of Germany, but they've opened up sort of divisions around the world. And their key factor is, or their key slogan is all for water, water for all, where water essentially is it's not a commodity. It's a human right. It's like the basic, the very basic element that we all need.
Exactly.
So they're very art focused, but also very active in terms of their activism, but apolitical at the same time, where they will highlight situations where they are able to, they don't want to just go in and try and fix the problem. We have to work with people in the area to see what the systemic problems exist, because there's something that is either broken down or hasn't been developed. And so going in there and having the conversations with various key figures in the community from different age groups to see where is the disconnect. Like, is it the fact that people don't have a shared responsibility? They don't feel compassion for another. So there's a deep conversation that happens there. And it's through the various mediums or various languages, such as art, music, sport, the languages that you actually don't need to be able to speak as an English speaking person or a German speaking person. You can speak those languages and you can all communicate. I can show you a picture and you can start to understand the concepts I'm giving you, or I can play a piece of music and you can feel that joy and dance, or you could play sport and you'd find the fundamentals of the rules and you can actually merge together, right? So you don't really need, especially considering the amount of vast languages that exist, there needs to be some other type of unifier that we can use creatively. So they use that in order to essentially find their way into solving these problems. And I'm fortunate enough to be involved with them as of this year to do some projects that help to put sanitization services in communities, get outreach and that sort of thing.
That's awesome. I totally love that. Now let me take that up a notch. If you, and there's two questions here, and Professor, I mean, there is a question asked in the chat, so I'm going to ask that one if that's cool. And then after that, we're going to ask a little bit lighter question as our last question of the night. But let's get into this, and because I think it was a really good question. So how do you see cryptocurrencies and being able to bank the unbanked? Do you see that as a benefit in South Africa, and how do you see it happening?
I think it's an absolute benefit. I was having this discussion with someone the other day, is when you want to explain to someone how to work through a specific, say, banking system or interface, if we're all working on the same interface, example, Uniswap, everyone across the world can ultimately interact with this because it's the same. It's sort of, it's uniform. But if I had to go to another country, I might have different methods to operate within my bank, different time delays. The fact that obviously I think we all understand that money is essentially trust, right? I trust you, and therefore this is how we need to make exchange.
That's all it is. It's a note of trust.
So when you have computers handling all the trust and verification, you actually start to have more human conversations between each other. So right. I think that becomes really important when trying to distribute value and wealth across a vast populace that are either interacting with a cell phone for the first time. So they already have a different approach to mobile money. So in that regard, it's a no-brainer, really.
Mobile money, borderless. Yeah.
Yep. Freedom of movement. Oh, yeah.
It's pretty crazy stuff. So now let's take that question and let's take that answer. And if you could have one superpower what would it be? And what would you use it for?
Oh, that's a tricky one. A single superpower. I'd like to be able to split myself into multiple different pieces that exist at the same time at different vantage points, so that I could see a problem from at least 1,000 different possibilities.
Oh, wow.
And I, at the same time, so then I'm sure I'd be able to see the fastest way to get to the solution.
Oh, that's amazing. I like that. That is a great answer. That is
So are they
just a great
separately
answer.
or jointly conscious?
Oh, a hive mind? No, I think there needs to be a degree of variance between each of them, because if you all exist in the same uniformity, then you're going to have the same thinking patterns, and then you're not going to actually see the possibilities.
Exactly.
So
'Cause if you
diversity
could
is
contradict
key.
yourself, you could just evolve perpetually.
Yeah, you just amoeboid into yourself consistently. It's like, no.
Speaking of
diversity-
NFTs, there's an art piece waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
into yourself constantly.
That's awesome. I
Yes.
totally love that answer. You know, guys, this has been an incredible podcast tonight and a great live stream. We hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. Saint, what do you think, sir? I mean, did you have a good time? Has this been pretty cool?
Oh man, I've enjoyed it. It's what, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I've got renewed energy. So like I'm
Nice.
wide awake again.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry
start
about
the
that.
day
Yeah,
all over.
you're not gonna be able to go to sleep after this one.
I don't think you have to
That's-
apologize. You should be saying you're welcome. I have a feeling. It looks like he's excited.
Yeah, I mean, wide awake. Thank you so
Exactly.
much.
That's
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
It was good having you
pleasure.
on. Thank you so
Everybody
much.
in the audience, Litecoin Lisa, Polly P, Benza, Rude Boy V, you know, thank you guys all for listening and supporting us. If it wasn't for the community, if it wasn't for our listeners, if it wasn't for all of our friends that support us the way they do, we wouldn't have a show, we wouldn't have a voice. And, you know, big shout outs to all our guests that grace us with their presence on this show, because again, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a show. So all of you, thank you so much for joining tonight, and we hope you guys have a great one, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Take it easy.
Peace.
Ciao. Peace.
Have a good one, Shinji. It was good talking to you.
Yes, sir.
You too.
Take care.
See ya.
Ciao.